Thanks very much for the opportunity to share missions on the Mission Sunday. I want to share with you we've had the interview, who we are, where we're located, what we do and why, and hopefully that will be an encouragement to you guys and to build the relationship between ourselves and MOBC, Moree and Sydney. If we can continue to build that relationship, hopefully in the future there'll be more opportunities for teams to come and visit, and even for some of our young folk to come this way and be involved and encouraged by you guys down here. So who we are, we've explained a little bit about that, Ephraim House and the disability service and the outreaches that we are involved with. Who it is that we minister to, primarily it's the indigenous people of our area, the Kamilaroi people. There are still racial tensions in the town of Moree and amongst the churches. So we are in a position to try and facilitate reconciliation. True reconciliation comes through Christ, and that's what we're working towards within the community of Moree. Amongst the people of Moree, we deal a lot with dysfunction, and there's a lot of substance abuse that we have to navigate our way through. We're not by any means expert in that area, but we seek to bring about or to share with the people the love of God and the message of salvation, which can bring about restoration, healing and reconciliation. If you don't know where Moree is, it's about 7 hours northwest of here, just below the Queensland border, and it's only a small town. There's only about 8,000 people. But we minister there as well as going out into other smaller communities further west. If you're free on the Easter school holidays, we do a 2-week convention circuit into 7 different communities around the northwest. Camp out for 2 nights at a time, like each community. Have gospel outreaches in the evening, ministry meetings in the morning, and share a time of fellowship together through the day. So there's opportunity for people to be involved there. You can come for the whole 2 weeks, or you can just come and go as you please, really. But that's part of the work that we do. We work very closely with the minister in Brewarrina, a local indigenous man out there, Isaac Gordon. He arranges that circuit, and we travel with him in support of him and the work out there. We go to Brewarrina quite a bit. We run a kids club in Brewarrina, which is another hour and a half west of us. Brewarrina is 4 hours southwest of us. And we go up to a little place called Kaduga, which is another 4 hours from us. We head out there once a month and have a church service with the local people there on one Saturday a month. It's a big day. If we go out and back in the day, it's generally about a 12-hour day. 4 hours out, we're there for 4 hours, and it's 4 hours home again. Our kids don't really enjoy that side of things. The troop carrier can be a bit uncomfortable for them, but they're involved. They help with music and things like that. They're very much a part of the ministry that we're involved with. we're dealing with problems in Moree or situations in Moree that are common in every town, I think. We like to think that we take a different approach to most in the way in which we have set the ministry up and been able to be a help in all sorts of different situations. Just through the week we had a young mum ask us if we would take her 3 children while she arranges to get into rehab. That's not something that we're able to do at this stage. We have had her children in the past to care for, but at this stage, for her, I think we've offered further support for her in the area of dealing with her, helping with her children, but taking them on full time for us at the moment is a bit too difficult. Another thing that we have running alongside everything else that's going on is we run a GAP program for school leavers. So if there's anyone that's sort of at a loss as to what to do with this year, we have a GAP program. It's called GAP, Gospel Applied Practically. So you can come to Moree, you can have employment in the disability service or the education service, but learn what it is to apply the gospel to life in every area. So there's involvement in the outreach ministries, there's involvement in work, and applying the gospel to those different areas of life. Living in a community, we have a ministry centre where we live on site, and the guys that are doing the GAP program live in the house next door. There's another house behind and a park area in between. So that's available if anyone's sort of looking for. That's where Ben was up in Moree for the last few months, staying on site at the ministry centre and being involved. And by the way, I can't see him, but he was a massive blessing. He was a big help to the work there. We're in a transitional process at the moment, and I get a bit emotional when sort of people talk about people leaving or coming and going. And we've had a few people leave town, so move from church and the ministry, and so we're in a process where we're sort of trying to find our feet again, and there's a bit more responsibility put back on us in the church side of things, as well as the ministry outreaches and those sorts of things. But the reason we do it, and like I said before, it's because Jesus, we have the answer. We have the only answer to life's problems, and that is Jesus Christ. He has given us an example of how to respond in different situations and deal with different people. But he's also placed a burden on our hearts for the town of Moree, for the community and the people there. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, why. But I think I'll explain further that we use the sort of the incarnational model where Jesus came and lived in the neighbourhood, and that's sort of how we view our role in Moree. It is cross-cultural ministry to a large extent, and we have to learn what it is to live in a community of all sorts of different people that think differently to us and behave differently, and so we have to come and dwell in the neighbourhood, live in close proximity to people that are different to us. John chapter 1 and verse 14, it says, "The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth." Jesus came and dwelt. We love the short-term missions. We would love it more if people would come and dwell, come and live in community in the town of Moree, to be a blessing to our community. we we sort of have that mindset that we are there for the long term. Erin said we met in January and we were married in December the same year. That was a very quick process, but in the process, in that sort of 11 months, 12 months, I asked her the question. I said, "Are you willing to die here? Are you willing to stay here long term?" I also asked her if she was willing to move to Walgett, and that was sort of a bit of a. But there is a need. Like the western corner of northwestern corner of New South Wales is in desperate need. There are ministers in Walgett and Brewarrina, but the smaller communities don't have. Out at Gadooga, they don't even have a hospital. They don't have a health service. I think they don't have a nurse in the health service. They have admin staff in the health service. But if you have a heart attack in Gadooga, the ambulance has to drive 75 kilometres from Lightning Ridge to pick you up and then get you back to a hospital. So there is desperate need, and I'll explain a little bit later that the government sort of doesn't. They can't fill those positions. Those positions need to be filled by God, by Christians who are willing to disadvantage themselves for the sake of a community, for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of Jesus Christ. It's the only way I can see those positions being filled in those areas, because the government can throw as much money as they like at people to go out there, but if they don't care for the people, then it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. So back sort of living in community and building relationships with the community. I like to think of the example set by Jesus when we hear of him at the age of 12 in the temple. And he says to his mother, "Don't you know that I should be about my Father's business?" And then we don't hear from him until he starts his ministry 18 years later. There's not anything mentioned. But when he starts his ministry, the people of his community knew exactly who he was. They could say things like, "Isn't he the carpenter's son?" Or wasn't his mother the one that had, he was born out of wedlock, he was conceived before they were married, and they had all sorts of derogatory things to say about him and her. But the people knew who he was, and he spent 18 years building relationships with the people that he was to minister to, his own people. And if Jesus needed 18 years to build those relationships, how much more do we? So if we're thinking about missions and going into mission, and it has to be a long-term approach, I believe, to build those relationships with a community of people that you have never met before. Takes time, and they need to know the ins and outs. They need to know the good and the bad. Jesus never sinned, but they obviously thought his mother had, and they knew the ins and outs of his life. They would be able to say, "Isn't he the one that built our dining room table, or the chairs that we sit on each night, or him and his father built our house, or put the extension on our house." These are the things that they were able to know about him before, and at that point when he was 12, he had already said that he was to be about his Father's business. And I believe that that's what his Father's business is, building relationships. God sent his Son so that our relationship with him might be restored. And we need, at Moree, that's the approach that we take. That's what we do. That's why we do it. We build relationships with people in order to have their relationship with God restored. And it's only Jesus that can do that. But he's asked us to be the mouthpiece, to be the ones that take the gospel to the people. So that's a part of the reason why we do it, how we do it. We do it because God requires us to do it. In Matthew chapter 28, Jesus came and said to them, "All authority is in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded. Behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." In Micah 6 verse 8, it says, "He has told you, O man, what is good. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God?" It's a requirement for us as believers to share the gospel, to facilitate the spreading of the gospel. Sometimes we can lose sight of that. Sometimes we can focus on ourselves, but God requires that we be involved in some way. And in Moree, this is the way that we have felt God leading us to be involved, to have an organisation that is set up to facilitate the spreading of the gospel in Moree. And then probably my favourite reason, and the passage that I want to read from this morning, is because we believe that the church is the bride of Christ, and if we are the bride of Christ, then there are certain requirements of the church, in our behaviour, in the way that we live, and the way that we prepare for His coming, the way that we get ready for for our groom to come and take us home. In Revelation chapter 19, I'll just get it out here. I sort of found it earlier. Verse 6, it says, "Then I heard what seemed to be the voice of great multitude, like the roaring of many waters, and like the sound of the mighty peals of thunder, crying out, 'Hallelujah! The Lord our God, the Almighty reigns. Let us rejoice and exalt Him and give Him glory. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, and His bride has made herself ready. It is granted for her to be clothed, or to clothe herself with fine linen, bright and pure. For the fine linen is the righteous deeds of the saints.'" So the things that we do for God are going to clothe the bride at her wedding. They're going to clothe as individuals, as people who make up the bride of Christ. The righteous acts that we do here on earth are what the church is going to wear when she meets her husband. And I've said for a long time now that she might be fairly scantily dressed on her wedding day, which would be an embarrassment. But the things, the righteous deeds that are done are what is going to clothe her. And I like to think of, I think it was Tim Keller that said, righteousness, not our imputed righteousness from Christ, but the righteous acts, that righteousness, or people who act righteously in that respect, are those who disadvantage themselves for the sake of the community. And the opposite to that, are those who act selfishly or evil, are those who would advantage themselves at the sake of the community. And as believers in Jesus Christ, as followers of Jesus Christ, as disciples and disciple makers, we need to be prepared to disadvantage ourselves for the sake of our community. And that's sort of where we're not there as an organisation, as a couple, as a family, but that's where we're head. That's where we want to head. That's where we want to be able to, imagine that on your headstone. He disadvantaged himself for the sake of others. I often think of what could be written on headstones, and I've got some that I'd like to write for some people, but on my own, I would love to have that. That's to be known, what we're known for. That he disadvantaged himself for the sake of his community, because that's what Christ did. We sang about it before. He came to earth, he stepped, out, laid aside his glory, and he came to earth for us, to redeem us. And what better example for us? We should be disadvantaging ourselves, not trying to get and to be selfish and to have everything that is available, but using what we have been given for the sake of others. But I also think, if we are the bride of Christ, then Proverbs 31, from verse 10 to verse 31, speaks to us as the church. And the things that are written there of an excellent wife or a virtuous woman should be attributed or should be exhibited in our churches, when we seek to be a light in the community and to be working in our communities for the sake of the gospel. And I'll just read it through there, and us men like to think of that as sort of our wives or what we would like to have in a wife, and I'm sure that's what Christ wants. I think for us today, this we as men, we're not to just sort of lump that on the women and say this is what we expect from a wife, but this is what Christ expects from his bride. And it says in verse 10, it says, "An excellent wife who can find? For she is more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with her hands willingly. She is like the ships of the merchants. She brings food from afar. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it, and with the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable, and her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hand to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household is clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself, and her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the city gates when he sits amongst the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchants. Strength and dignity are her clothing. She laughs at a time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. And this is what he says: "Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the city gates." Who was it that sits in the city gates? Her husband. He is able to praise her for all that she has done in disadvantaging herself for the sake of the community. And I think as the church, as the bride of Christ, that's what we should be known for. I was saying earlier about the government, and I think there are, and some of you might work for different government agencies, and I don't want to sort of get into that sort of argument, but there are agencies and organisations that do well. But does the church do better? Do we surpass them all in our acts of kindness, in our willingness to give, in our willingness to be available? It says there that her lamp doesn't go out at night. A lot of the organisations, we have a massive problem in Moree when with domestic violence and things like that. It doesn't happen between 9 and 5, or 8 and 4. It's at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, 2 o'clock in the morning. We're getting phone calls to go and help people particularly young women in situations, they're too afraid to call the police or to have that sort of, but they need something. And are we willing to be available at all hours to go and help to take the children from those situations if need be, and look after them until the situation calms down? Are we willing to go and sit in the lockup with teenagers that have got themselves in trouble? Are we willing to do those sorts of things outside our normal hours of work? As people say to me, what hours do you work? I don't know. I work whenever I'm asked to. And that's the sort of thing that, particularly in a mission sense, we need to have that sort of thought process and willingness. It says there that she works willingly with her hands. She's willing to do the hard work. Are we as a church comfortable in our position, or are we willing to get out and work for the sake, so that our future groom is able to be praised in the city gates, so that others will see, that do we let our light shine before men, that they may see our good deeds and glorify our Father in heaven? Is our husband going to be praised because of the work that we're involved with, because of the willingness of us to put in the hard work? Strength and dignity are her clothing. The things that she's recognised for. When you see a wanted poster or something, people wanted by the police, they put up what they're wearing so that they're easily recognisable. Well, here she's clothed in strength and dignity. People are able to identify her as somebody who is strong and who is willing to be a help. That's her, the thing that identifies her. She doesn't eat the bread of idleness. She's willing to go the extra mile and do the work that needs to be done. She considers a field and she buys it. She's wise with her finances, and these are the sorts of things that that we're sort of trying to work towards as the bride of Christ. These are the things that we need to be, I believe, doing within our community to bring people to know Christ, to bring people into the kingdom, having the kingdom of God extended, and having His name glorified and honoured in the places that we work. Whether it's secular work or whether it's working within the church, it doesn't matter. As believers, we are the church, and we are the bride of Christ. And I think that we need to be having this passage sort of open to us and filling our minds with the things that Christ is looking for in His bride, and being involved in that. So again, what is it that we do? We run the NDIS program or an NDIS service in Moree. We are available for different work, and we've just had a phone call this morning, 6 o'clock, that one of the very first participant that we had on our books, the one that got us started with the NDIS, he passed away this morning at 6 o'clock. I've worked very closely with him for, I don't know how many years now, 5 or 6 years. And he was admitted to hospital the other day, Wednesday night, and he passed away this morning. We're working with his family and things like that to try and sort this end of life out with them and be involved there. That's all a part of the disability service, that we are willing and able to go further than other organisations and be a help in our community. The education program, and having that available to the children to help with their education. I don't know if anyone's in the education system here, but it's failing out west. It's failing the children. We've got children in high school that can't read and write. The further west you go, the worse it seems to be. There's an incentive for teachers to come to places like Moree, do a few years, get their points up, and then move back to the city or back to the coast with a promotion. And that sort of is just a revolving door. We don't have teachers that come and stay, and if they do, it's only one or two here and there. But it's detrimental to the community, it's detrimental to the children. They spend time building relationships with these teachers, and then over the Christmas break they up and leave, and that all falls apart. And the children sort of feel at a loss. There's people that they've trusted that have just abandoned them again. And it's the same with any sort of state government organisation. The police have the same incentives, the ambulance have the same, the nurses, teachers, all those incentives are there for people to come and do a few years of hard labour, I suppose, out in the West, and then pack up and leave. And it hurts the community. So yeah, we're trying to pick up the pieces there and help with those who are behind in their education. We have a few different mercy ministries that we're involved with. We pick up food and fruit and vegetables from the local supermarkets, the sort of stuff they can't put on their shelves or they've taken off their shelves. We have a food pantry that's available for people to come and take free the food that's there. And then we also distribute food on a Thursday night. We cook 120 meals and we drive them around through the streets and have contact with the children and kids and families, and are able to provide a meal for some of the children there. And I say to people, it's not every child that we give a meal to needs it, but I'm not going to distinguish between one or the other. If a group of them come to the car and want a meal, that they all get one. It's a way of blessing our community, but also being known in the community and trusted by parents and carers in the community. Oftentimes, especially in the wintertime, when we have the tutoring trailer go out of an afternoon, we'll stay around afterwards and have an open air gospel service. We set the speakers up and we're able to use the park or some of the different parks in town and be able to share the gospel through the loudspeakers, and everyone can come and share a meal together there and hear the gospel, listen to the singing and to the songs and be involved. And those sorts of things we're able to do. We don't generally run it in the summertime because it's 40 odd degrees, even at 8 o'clock at night. So it's not the most comfortable for people to be sitting out and ask Ben about the flies. It's not ideal in the summertime. But wintertime's lovely. We can light a fire and we can sit around the fire and we can share the message of salvation publicly. And the community ask for it. They want it. They desire it. They want us to share with them the message of salvation. And we don't hold back. They know where we stand in relation to heaven and hell and the love of Christ that is available to them. And our hope and prayer is that they see that love and experience that love, as well as listen to it and hear of it from the Word of God. On the Thursday night, after we do the initial dinner run, we do a later run to meet with some of the teenagers. We started that program because there was young women sort of selling themselves to truck drivers in a like a park in town, sort of. So we decided that we would go there and try and disrupt what was going on. The police didn't want to know about it. The Shire, the council didn't want to know about it. They actually moved us, or told us that we weren't allowed to meet there on these nights, the Shire, and they progressively moved us from park to park. But now we sort of, again, we do a delivery. We drive around and we meet with the teenagers and just spend a few minutes listening to them and talking to them and hearing of their day and how things have been, and giving them a safe space to talk, and hopefully in time trust us and come to us and be available and have the opportunity of hearing again the message of salvation. I've spoken about the outreaches and the different times and different places. The GAP program, it's something that we've only sort of just not long, it's been a few years it's been running, but if there are any people who are at a loss as to what to do with this year, I don't want to sort of be pinching young ones that can be working here in the church or being involved in different opportunities here, but if there is someone that feels led to go and be involved in cross-cultural ministry, or we hope to be able to train up these young ones to come back to the churches and be a help in the churches that they're involved with. And then on the site where we live and have church and the office and stuff, we have a community and family centre where people are able to come and use the facilities for barbecues, for birthdays, for wakes after funerals and things like that, to have a safe space where they can all join together and be together. Docs and those other out-of-home care agencies use it for their visitations for different families. It's nice and private, the park's available for them to play in. So that's sort of our approach to mission. I hope that that's an encouragement to you. It's been a blessing, for us to get to know you guys. Like I said before, thank you for the gift of finances to help with shade and things like that at the centre, and being able to have that available for our community. Thank you too for coming out and the young ones that came and were involved with the holiday program. And the children will remember you. They will make fun of you. They will laugh at you. They will mock you. But being able to share with them the message of salvation, the thing that God requires of us to make disciples, to make that known to our towns, to our communities, to those that we have contact with. The teams that come out are a massive blessing to us. So hope that can continue, and that relationship between Moree and MOBC can grow and be a mutual blessing. So thank you very much. I'll leave those thoughts with you. I'd be happy to discuss them if you disagree with me afterwards. Or if I'm happy to be around and discuss different things in relation to the ministry and outreach in Moree. But thank you for having us, and I'll leave you with those thoughts. Thanks very much.